So good morning and welcome to Java with Jerry. We're live, as always, from the penthouse suite of Stadium Towers right here in the Platinum Triangle, and I'm glad you are back. It's Friday. It's Wednesday. I wish it was Friday. It's Wednesday, February 28th, but it is the last day of the month. It's flying by, and we're glad you're here. We're here every Wednesday. We hope you continue to come back on Wednesdays. For those of you that can't do it and hear it on Podbean or iTunes later as a podcast, we're happy to have you as well. Lots of ways to enjoy Java with Jerry. So what are we doing today? Today, our guest is one of my favorite people, one of what I think is the new cadre of really brilliant city managers, Jim Vanderpool from Buena Park. And Jim has got a great story to tell about his city and has done some really cutting-edge stuff. So we're glad to have him on. I'm going to try to get quickly through the news items that we usually cover, and I'll do a little commentary on, and then we'll get him on because we have lots to talk about. And then our feature for today is You Can't Make This Stuff Up, and I've got a great one. You don't want to miss this one. You'll be sharing it with your friends. All right, let's start with the news, your Java news. On the national front, a couple of very serious things, unfortunately, to talk about. Monday was the 25th anniversary of the original World Trade Center bombing, where 6 people lost their lives on that day 25 years ago. That really was a foreshadowing of what we've been doing for the last quarter of a century in fighting radical terrorism. And it was a sad, sad day. They marked it on Monday at the World Trade Center Memorial. 6 people lost their lives, including a mother-to-be who was one day away from taking maternity leave that morning when a 1,200-pound bomb went off. And so they marked that day with sorrow, and our thoughts and prayers go out to all the people who marked that anniversary. Also in the national news, the Supreme Court heard arguments that could have wide-ranging impact in California and all over the country for how politics is done, because it was the Janus case hearing on Monday, which is Mark Janus, a public employee in Illinois, bringing a lawsuit against the state for what he considered to be their rule allowing public employee unions to do mandatory dues, which are called fair share fees. And he is fighting that in court. The last time a case like this went to court, Justice Scalia had just passed away. The court deadlocked 4-4. And since then, this new challenge has arisen and made it to the Supreme Court. And now, of course, Justice Neil Gorsuch has replaced Scalia, a conservative thinker. People were looking to see what he would do at the hearing. Court observers say the court still seemed to be split 4-4, and Justice Gorsuch followed the lead of Justice Thomas, who rarely ever asked a question, and apparently during the entire hearing on the Janus case, never asked a question, never made a comment, just took copious notes. So sometime in June, we'll have a ruling. Stay tuned for that one. That's going to have impacts all over the place, including in California. Speaking of California, we will quickly go to the state news. I'm sorry to inform you, the drought is back. I know last year we had a record winter, we got record snowpack, we got lots of reservoir replenishment, but apparently there are a lot of areas throughout the state that are already experiencing drought again. We are arid after all, and the fighting has begun for the precious gallons of water. So you've got environmentalists against developers, developers against farmers, farmers against those who are in urban areas, all fighting for a precious commodity of water, and the fighting will continue. As Mark Twain once said, whiskey is for drinking and water is for fighting, and apparently we're back in drought. On the local news, not fun story to tell of Heather Locklear, who was arrested for domestic violence last Sunday. Apparently, it appears that Heather was in some sort of domestic dispute in Thousand Oaks on Sunday, was arrested for 1 felony count of domestic abuse and 3 misdemeanor counts of battery on emergency personnel. Really, Heather? So she was booked into Ventura County Jail Sunday, but was not there on Monday, according to reports. Now, in full candor, as your humble reporter, I have to tell you, I share a very close personal connection to Heather. She and I both graduated from UCLA in 1979, and we were very close. Well, at least one of those is true. I can't tell you how terrible the drive is to Ventura to bail somebody out. Can't tell you because she didn't call me, but nonetheless, we hope that she gets herself straightened out. Don't know what that was about. I have no details on what the actual dispute was, just that she was arrested. Finally, in your sports news, Olympics are over. The medal count is in. The Norwegians, who were kicking everybody's behind, came in the big winners with 39 medals overall, eclipsing a United States record that we set in the Vancouver Games of 37 medals. They got got 39. So good for them. 31 for Germany, 29 for Canada. We came in fourth with 23. So that was good for us. And by the way, one of them was the USA men's curling team bringing home their first gold. We even beat out the roid-raging Russians that had that doper in curling. I still don't get why a guy needs to, roid up for curling, but, sweeping can be rigorous. Anyway, nobody can slide a stone like us, so USA, way to go. And that's your Java news. So that's it for today. I'm going to bring Jim in. I'm choking up over the curling. I'm going to bring Jim in. We're going to get going on his interview, and I'm going to have him join us while I talk a little bit about him from his bio. So Jim, come join us on set. He's been laughing at my news from offset. Good to have you on.
Good to have you.
Friend.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
I just want to top Heather Locklear.
Yeah, well, we're very close. We're really not, but she's one of my favorite stars, so I picked up that news item. Let me tell you a little bit about Jim. I know some of you know him, and he's got a really extensive bio, but I've highlighted some things that I think are interesting, Jim, to talk about in your background, and I highlighted them for a reason. So he was appointed city manager effective in July, summer of 2012, and has been in Buena Park for 17 years, and that's what I think was interesting. Before he was the city manager, he was deputy city manager responsible for internal support services, human resources, risk management, purchasing divisions. Before that, he had been responsible for the city's Convention and Visitor Bureau, communication and marketing, the rebranding of Buena Park as a destination. Prior to his role as a deputy city manager, he was assistant to the city manager and oversaw the Orange County Fire Authority and Animal Control Services, and did legislative advocacy, working at county, state, and federal levels, which he still does as a city manager. And before that, had been in public works and administered the capital improvement projects and the administration of the city's maintenance operations. And of course, he's got a BA in public administration and a master's in business administration. So an extensive background. And the reason I highlighted all that and wanted to talk about it is because I'm often asked, why do we compensate city managers the way we do? What makes their job so complex? And your career has already covered the span of all the different disciplines the CM has to know, right? I mean, you have to be able to negotiate labor contracts, deal with infrastructure, handle police services. You got a lot of employees, and some of them are armed. You got to deal with fire authority. You got to do development. You got to handle parks and recs. You got to do purchasing. It's really a complex business.
I think one of the benefits I have of being, city manager in this capacity is that I've done so much at, different, in different departments throughout the organization. I think it's given me, just tremendous perspective on the overall operations of the city. But yeah, when you think about a city and you compare it to something similar in the private sector, let's say, and you think about the CEO of a company, that's really how you look at it, right? And so, we have, 400 plus employees. We have a $100 million all fund budget. We operate a utility. We've got a full water system, sewer system, storm drain system. And so, a lot of things that, people don't think about when they think about a full city operation. I mean, sure, they see the big things. They see the fire trucks. They see the police cars.
Right.
Those things are very visible, but it's the things under the streets. It's, it's all of our park infrastructure. It's our senior centers. It's everything we do as a city.
And it's all the programs and all the budgeting and all the planning and the
concerts in the park. I mean, everything that we do, and do well. So, when you look at it from that perspective, it helps people understand what it is that I actually do.
And I said he's among the cutting edge young cadre of city managers, and you'll hear how he's been innovative. But I also know, because of this extensive background, you've now begun to be recognized for the actual years and grade that you have. I understand you're getting senior discounts now when you go out to eat.
Yes, I have.
People are recognizing you're really long in the tooth, Vanderpool.
Yeah, not as young as I used to be.
But, I just had to tease him about that because all of us we're giving him a hard time. That involuntarily, somebody said, let's give the old guy a discount. I mean,
hey, why not?
You get into movies cheaper.
I'll take good deeds.
Yeah, why not? I want to talk a little bit about a bunch of stuff, and I'm not going to get it all in. But let's start sort of with a baseline, a little about Buena Park's history and sort of why it's an entertainment destination and what you guys have done to sort of leverage that background.
Sure. Buena Park has a rich history in entertainment. Walter Knott and all the amazing things he did for tourism, not just in Buena Park, but, really as an industry worldwide. I mean, he was the pioneer of this business. And, he did build, America's first theme park. And, and so building on that. And
one of my favorites as a kid and still now.
Sure. And building on that rich tradition of Walter Knott and, the other tourism leaders in Orange County and the region, Buena Park has really, springboarded off of that and throughout the decades and even into the current times right now and all the things that are happening in Buena Park. So there is a rich history of tourism, but also of community. We're rich with parks. We're rich with, programming. We're rich with the people that live in our community.
Yeah.
And so, it's gone from, a city of boysenberries where, Jerry, we all bleed boysenberry in Buena Park.
That's exactly right. Ralph Boysen.
But, to really a robust community that's just thriving.
Yeah. My favorite pie, everybody knows, birthday, don't get me a cake, get me a boysenberry pie and make it from Knott's Berry Farm.
Of course.
It's my favorite. But you're also doing a lot of new stuff that your residents hadn't seen in the past. Talk a little bit about some of the health things that you're building into your infrastructure and how recreation is tied into this entertainment for the people who are actually living there, whose hometown Buena Park is.
Sure. Over the years, Jerry, you and I have talked about the economic development progress we've made in the city and the business, improvements and expansions of our local economy.
And we'll talk a little bit about that this morning, but I like this.
Absolutely. But you know what? I love the stuff that makes a city a community and the things that we're doing in Buena Park.
Yeah.
I mean, for example, Larwin Park in the southern part of the city, we're completely scraping it and building a brand new park.
Wow.
So, I mean, how many cities just completely scrape a complete park and build a brand new community asset?
Well, mostly if you went and said that to your city manager, he'd go, wait a minute, I got a lot of money invested in that park. You want me to do what?
Right. So, our walking trails, really building on the momentum of our friends from the city of La Palma, through that Southern California Edison right-of-way.
Yeah.
We've embarked on a $20 million project, recognizing that it will required to be done in phases. We completed phase 1, which is a complete, concrete, decomposed granite side-by-side walkway throughout the entire corridor there.
And it's not just a walkway. People can recreate through there. I mean, you can ride your bike.
You can ride your bike. You can skateboard. You can jog. You can bring your baby, buggy runner thing. And so it really gets those people, up and going. And we want to expand on that and put, outdoor workout equipment, put in landscaping, put in other amenities that will help, our residents. And some of our events, Jerry, that really make city a community. We've added autumn nights, for example, where we bring in at our community center. Brand new to Buena Park, where we do cultural arts, live performances. We do theater. We do concert series.
That's awesome.
These are things that happen in September, October that we never did before. Historical, bringing people to our historical assets, working with our historical society, bringing last year a big fall festival, kind of Halloween themed. We had over 2,000 people at our inaugural event last year.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So some great stuff.
So where does that stuff come from, Jim? I mean, typically when someone talks to a city manager, we talk about the things you've done, and we'll talk a little bit about Beach Boulevard and some of the great businesses that are coming there. You've got some, places that everybody goes to visit in Buena Park, Rock and Brews and Portos and others. But those are the sort of traditional things that city managers do. How does this focus to tying the assets that brings to the city into bringing community life together and giving events and venues a place in your community plan come together? How did you plan that? Where did the idea come from?
It starts at the dais, right? The mayor and the city council really, they put together a strategic plan. And one of the things they focus on is community programming and lifestyle events and things that bring people into our city. Everybody's working hard, raising children, putting food on the table, right? And so, the council wants to make sure that there are events to bring people out into the community and share these assets, with their neighbors. And so it starts with the mayor and the city council. It really does, Jerry.
But you also have to have the skill sets on staff to be able to figure out how to make this stuff happen. So
tremendous stuff. And I will say our community partners, Buena Park is a city of huge heart. And so, the players donate to these events and sponsor these events, which allow us to bring thousands of kids out to make these events successful.
Let's talk a little bit about Beach Boulevard because it's gone through a renaissance. And I want you to be able to brag a little bit about what you've done in Buena Park.
Absolutely. So, one of the biggest things that we did was really try to, bring in development into Buena Park. And the Beach Boulevard corridor of years past wasn't the most desirable place to invest in if you were a Hilton, if you were a Starwood, Aloft hotel, developer. Right. And so the city years ago, started the process through redevelopment of acquiring a lot of these really tired and crime-ridden properties. And we bought them, and then we turned them over to these private developers that really, are transforming our corridor.
They have really transformed it a lot, and you brought in some really unique and cool businesses there. Rock and Brews and Portos and You've done a lot.
We are. And I'll tell you, my family and I, we were at Rock and Brew and at Porto's over the weekend, as a matter of fact. And they're just packed.
Yeah, they are.
And the places are hopping. And so, we've got a 50,000 square foot rainforest atrium going in that will welcome, thousands of butterflies and different breeds from all over the world.
It's such a cool thing you're doing. The kids can go and find butterflies in the urban area.
Right. With a 300-seat theater where you can come in and learn about the migration of the monarch butterfly up and down North America. So family-friendly, family-focused.
Right.
We
go do medieval times.
Oh, medieval times. Go watch pirates do acrobatics and then go ride some roller coasters. And so and then to provide the hospitality facilities for the people to stay in and feel safe. And so, building public parking lots. Yeah. Parking is so critical to the success of that corridor. And the City Council has authorized, and we've now completed 2 huge public parking spaces along Beach Boulevard to accommodate, I think, upwards of 400 spaces.
That's important because you're also building places for destination people to come as well. There's hotels in the books. Talk a little bit about what you're doing and building hotels.
Right. We're tremendously proud of progress in that area, Jerry. We've got 4 hotels in active construction, not the least of which is a Buena Park Hilton.
Yeah.
Buena Park Hilton, Jerry.
Yeah.
What an awesome thing
to
brag about. Starwood Aloft Hotel. Right. We've got a 10-story boutique hotel. These are all approved, entitled hotels.
That's amazing.
Either currently under construction or about to put a shovel on the ground.
How many rooms is that in total? Do you know?
I would say 700 rooms.
That's a lot of rooms.
A lot of hotel rooms.
That's a lot of hotel rooms.
People. So we want people to come into this region, and we're very active. Not competing with one another, but working with the other Orange County tourism destinations and bringing people into our area, because when Orange County, wins, we all win.
Yeah, and that's true. People that come into town don't just do the attraction in the town they come and stay in. They also go visit the beach, and they go to Disneyland, and they, visit our restaurants.
Go to South Coast Plaza.
And
we hope they do. We hope they do.
Yeah, we want them to enjoy the region. Yeah.
Right.
Really exciting stuff that you got going on. Let's talk about some of the challenges for city managers. I know that every day you're dealing with all of these exciting things, but you're also dealing with the nuts and bolts of making, widgets, and it's a hard business to be in. And of late, there have been some real serious challenges for cities. Let's talk a little bit about some of the things that are on your radar that keep you up at night.
Certainly, the homeless dilemma that we have here regionally, not just in Buena Park, but certainly as a regional issue.
Throughout the country now.
Absolutely.
It's everywhere. Yeah.
And I really applaud the leaders, certainly in Buena Park, but, countywide for dealing with this issue with heart.
Yeah.
We are not the municipal leaders of Not in My Town. In Buena Park, as an example, the City Council has authorized, and we've hired 2 officers dedicated solely to working with the homeless.
That's great.
Not to move them along, Jerry.
Yeah.
To work with them. We've engaged social service professionals to come in and do casework.
Yeah.
Okay, so we actually get in, we interview, we specifically cater services to what you need, because as we all know,
you assess the need of the individual. Yeah,
absolutely. And so they're human beings like you and I. So that continues to be an issue. Some of the state involvement in local government is a problem. And
let's talk about one specifically, Jim, because I know this is something you saw on everyone's radar, but to me, I find it the most offensive thing that I've heard of late that Sacramento is doing, and that's this notion in Senator Wiener's bill 827 of taking planning sort of away from the cities, and you started in public works, so you understand the importance of planning, but now saying, we're going to tell you where you're going to put your housing. We're going to tell you how much density you're going to have. You're going to locate it within these certain transportation corridors. To me, that's really offensive to tell 480 cities that we know what's good for all of you, one size fits all. Because the things that makes Buena Park different from Anaheim or Tustin or Newport Beach are what make it a unique community and why people want to be there.
Right. And one size does not fit all, right? And here we have a senator from an urban environment, really talking about land use and planning, statewide. And, the people of Buena Park know really what's best for what's needed in Buena Park.
Right.
And they're not turning their back on the issues that are trying to be addressed in this legislation. But you're not going to solve the problem, statewide with one piece of legislation, because frankly, what works in an urban environment like San Francisco doesn't really work in Buena Park. But there are other solutions, I think, that we have shown that we are willing to look at, and we've taken initiative and implemented. So
that's exactly right.
You can't look at it statewide as a one fix.
So as citizens are listening to this, Jim, if there's a call to action for them, what do you want them to do? You want them to reach out to their legislature? Do you want them to work with the city managers? Is there a pushback that you guys are doing in an organized way? What's the way that we can contribute?
I think the first thing is, Jerry, is to stay educated, because I really think that people don't know what is out there and what's happening until there's, 4 high density units going into the backyard of your neighbor right behind your 5-foot, 6-foot wall.
Yeah.
And so these are things that are happening right now in Sacramento.
And it counteracts all the stuff that you're doing, right? We just got through talking about how you're doing active, recreational planning. You're putting in walking paths and place for people to bike and the like. And if somebody comes in and says, no, right next to that, I'm going to stick in a bunch of high density, and that means I'm going to do wraparound parking and we're going to have a lot of traffic, that impacts whether or not the city's plan for how they are going to impact the health of their community is going to work.
And this is not to say, Jerry, that we are opposed to high density housing.
You've got a bunch.
Buena Park has a record of welcoming proposals and building projects that are high density. And actually, we insist on affordability too. So we're doing all the things that this bill is trying to implement, but let us solve it locally. Give us the tools to solve it locally.
The difference is, Jim, you're doing it Buena Park's way, not the state of California's way, which they'll just say, here's the brand, this is the way you're going to do it, this is what your density is. And that doesn't necessarily fit for you.
Right, exactly.
And in fact, speaking of building, you've got the Source going in, which is a huge shopping center with lots of opportunities for people to be entertained and to go shopping and the like. And it's got housing components and lots of activity involved in it.
And Jerry, and that's a great example of what we're talking about, right? So on that corridor on Beach Boulevard, right on Beach, we are going through the entitlement process for 250 residential units to go vertical, right? But it works on that corridor, right? It works on Beach Boulevard.
Higher than Beach Boulevard has seen before, right?
Absolutely. It'll be upwards of 16 stories, okay?
Yikes.
But Jerry, think about it. It's on the Beach Boulevard commercial corridor, right? I'm not talking about putting this next door to Larwin Park that I talked about moments ago being under reconstruction. So we're doing it. We're putting the density in. We're just planning it smart. We're doing it right.
And be engaged with your city. Know what your city managers and your council are planning and where they're putting developments. When you see public notices come out and say, we're going to have a workshop on where we're going to put multifamily housing and where we're going to put mixed-use development, pay attention to it, because it makes a difference if your citizens can engage, right?
And when they engage, I think it's important to kind of look at the tide of what's out there. And when you've got Senator Wiener, who is pushing one proposal, it just can't all be zero, none, don't do it in my city.
Right.
It has to be about putting it in places that fit in your city.
But being done thoughtfully.
And proper planning, and for the parking, and for the circulation in the area, and that's what it's not going to help to come and say no, not in my backyard.
And I don't see the city manager saying that. I just think they're saying, let me do it the way it makes sense in my city plan. Julie, how am I doing on time? I'm afraid to look. Oh, we're in good shape. Tell me about the exciting new things you see coming down the pike that you think will be happening and that next year I'll be asking you about. Anything you can't tell me that will get you in trouble with the council, don't. But if you can break news on Java, we want it.
One of the things that we're embarking on right now, and again, I'm excited that it kind of started in Buena Park, is, this revitalization of Beach Boulevard. And what's fun is that now that has happened in Buena Park, our neighbors have noticed, and we are working together to really bring Beach Boulevard to a high level of importance and recognition and celebrate its history.
I'm glad you went there, because I noticed it in the other cities. They're all working on their medians. They're all doing stuff with the businesses they're putting on that corridor. And
so there are now regular monthly meetings with all the cities along the corridor, from the hills in La Habra to the ocean in Huntington Beach. Is that
right? Oh, I didn't know that. You guys are getting together and master planning the corridor.
We are master planning the whole corridor. And so it started off with Buena Park, Anaheim, and Stanton. And before you know it, and it's the mayors of these cities, Jerry, that are kind of spearheading this.
Is that right? Yeah.
And it's now spilt into all the city councils and mayors and managers up and down that corridor. And so we've received several planning grants from SCAG, from Caltrans.
Oh, that's good.
Upwards of, I think, $750,000. We're looking at a lifestyle event, perhaps some kind of a half marathon or some type of a thing up and down Beach Boulevard.
Wow.
We're talking about looking at economic development opportunities, beautification opportunities.
That's great.
Crime, because as you know, Jerry, people don't know where one city stops and where one city starts.
Right.
And we put signs up, but the reality is that corridor flows. And as it does, when we work together as cities along the corridor, that's great public policy.
And it's a major spine. When I was a kid growing up in the San Gabriel Valley, we all drove down Whittier Boulevard to hit Highway 39. We followed in those days Beach Boulevard to get down to Huntington to surf. Right. And it's always been a major destination. But shutting it down for a marathon, how do you do that? You guys get, what, tens of thousands of cars an hour through there? Where are you rooting all these people?
Very careful planning. Very careful planning.
A lot of serious planning.
Something else we're doing in Buena Park is we continue to expand our auto center. And so, we've got all the big brands in Buena Park. We've got, BMW, Mercedes, Tesla. And so we're expanding, our auto center, corridor by welcoming Jeep, Dodge, Chrysler, Ram. That's currently under construction. Will open up probably here shortly. We're assembling 2 additional sites as a city to welcome even more brands into our auto center. And so that's certainly on the forefront. I really look to expand our recreational opportunities in the city and community events. And so that's kind of what's on the forefront.
Well, that was perfect timing because Julie's giving me the sign that we've got to go to our feature. But we're going to have you back to talk about all of those things you're doing. When I told you he was innovative and cutting edge as one of this cadre of young city managers, you can see why, right? Everything that's going on in Buena Park has to eventually get to his office and fit somewhere in a timeline. And I don't know how you juggle all the balls, but you do a good job. And you're doing a bunch of exciting stuff. So we're glad you're doing it, from the health of the community to the vibrancy of its economic development to planning with all your neighbors to do big events. It'll be fun.
Thank you, Jerry. And it's I'm blessed to be in this capacity, and I love what I do. And so thank you.
No, we're blessed to have you. So we want you to hang a little bit. I'm going to do our feature. This week we're doing You Can't Make This Stuff Up, and I swear I did not make this up. This is an actual story. So here's our feature, You Can't Make This Up, this week. In a recent study, California, the entire state, was ranked number 2 in sin. That's right. We're number 2. Apparently, Wallet Hub, an online financial advice website, conducted a scientific study compiling various social, economic, and demographic patterns to judge which states are more sinful than others. After juggling 38 benchmarks, I didn't know there were 38 benchmarks of sin. I thought there were only 7 deadly ones. After juggling 38 benchmarks from debt-to-income ratios, crime stats, levels of inactive adults, frequency of addiction like drinking and gambling, we came in number 2 behind, are you ready? Florida. That's right, Florida beat us. Florida, apparently Granny and Gramps have a lot of time on their hands and they're not working, so they're able to get out there and do some sinning. And we were just ahead of Nevada and Texas. Just ahead of Nevada. Nevada has like brothels and strip clubs.
They've got Sin City.
They got Sin City, and we came in ahead of them. And Granny and Gramps beat us all. Damn, what are you people doing out there? The least sinful was Vermont, followed by North Dakota, Maine, and Utah. Now, Vermont, North Dakota, and Maine, I get it. It's cold. When it's cold, you're going to be inside. You're not going to be out and about, and there isn't a lot of sinning going on. And Utah's Utah, right? I mean, the Mormons outnumber everyone, so there's no place to get a drink, and there's no adult entertainment. So Californians, after all the math was done, they said we are engaged very, very enterprisingly, I guess, in being vain, lustful, jealous, greedy, and angry. And except for Florida, we win on sin. So Florida, you can't make this stuff up. So that's you can't make this up for this week. You're number 2 in sin. Get busy, Californians. You got a lot of work to do to get to number 1. All right. I want to thank our guest, Jim. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Jim Vanderpool, City Manager of Buena Park. You get to take home your Java with Jerry cup as your parting gift. So I want to see that on your City Manager desk. And next week, our guest will be Dean Guccione, who is a former battalion chief in Beverly Hills and now the CEO of Tomorrow's Firefighter, doing some really interesting things, training young people to work on the public safety staffs of cities like Jim's, and that's a really vital part of the city's budget. Maybe when you come back next time, we'll talk a little bit about this consortium of all the city firefighters and police getting together and talking about public safety, because I know you're busy on that as well. And we want you, of course, to stay tuned. Be here next week to see Dean. You can catch this episode if you missed it or you're hearing it on Podbean or iTunes and want to see it. It's on orangeslice.com. Go there to sign up. Until next week, continue to have a great week, make good choices, and we'll see you next week right here on Java with Jerry.